There are some places where life is best lived simply. Places seemingly far removed from the accelerated world we live in, but in reality, they are within earshot of the commotion. It's these unassuming lands that inspire the visionaries, that speak to the homely. Ironically, it's these lands that make the least noise that speak to me the loudest. So a lot of movies are shot here in Malta.
There's good reason for that. Malta's on the 36th latitude, like Los Angeles.
Okay.
And the sun hits us at a diagonal, like a Caravaggio light, if you like. And also, the weather is so good, you can shoot for 10 months a year, minimum of 8 hours a day.
It's like perfect, unobscured light.
You see, the light is the secret of cinema. And we've had here some of the top lighting photographers in cinema.
It seems almost unimaginable that a trio of near barren islands lost in the Mediterranean could capture the eyes of generation after generation of storytellers. And yet, there is something that calls them here. A blank canvas of possibilities for the imaginations of countless location scouts, cinematographers, and directors over the past 60 years of cinema. What you may not realize is that many of your favorite films and TV shows have been shot, at least in part, somewhere on Malta. But its popularity is what puzzles me. Though Malta ranks 185th out of 194 countries on Earth in terms of landmass, it stands as the 81st most filmed nation. In other words, the tiny amount of land and city found here can be seamlessly set as a backdrop for films meant to portray anywhere, from ancient Rome to modern-day Israel. But while the main island of Malta and its myriad of tight corridors and limestone structures usually paint the scene for urban settings in film, the rural sister islands of Gozo and Comino give way to the landscapes that yearn for artistry, an oftentimes overlooked terrain that I couldn't wait to step foot on. Early morning on a Maltese ferry. The small distances between Malta's three islands means it doesn't take long to sail between either of them. Now, Gozo is roughly a quarter of the size of Malta Island, and it's the northernmost of the three that make up the nation. And though it's so close that you can actually see Malta and Comino from Gozo's eastern coast, you might as well be in another nation altogether. For starters, they have tuk-tuks here. Yes, the same ones you find in Thailand. Strange, I know, but that's how I'll be making my way around the island today. And if you know this show, you know my love for tuk-tuk rides is well rooted, so I welcome this Southeast Asian way of getting around anywhere, even on a dry Mediterranean landscape. And it doesn't take much of the drive to realize that Gozo is one of those places that time forgot. The type of place where you could see a picture and not really be able to tell which decade it was taken. Nothing seems to change here, because perhaps life doesn't need it to. A neglected rural bubble that is little concerned with the egregious urbanization of the main island and more focused on pure Maltese living. And of course, what better way to soak up that lifestyle than by popping open a cold cheek beer in front of the town square and getting a feel for what Malta used to be like. An ideal spot to contemplate this assumption, and quite a few others.
I really feel like people who live on these islands probably live into their 110s. Think of it. If you were just sipping on good beer all day, eating a healthy Mediterranean diet, not worrying about anything, how could you not live 110 years? I mean, you don't have stressful things such as an elevated rent or mortgage, a girlfriend that peeks into your social media accounts, deleting browser histories. It's not really a problem here. I could really spend hours doing this. It would make for horrible television. But I can spend hours just here in a plaza, drinking a beer, eating some kind of meat, rabbit. Rabbit seems to be a good meat of choice here.
What you may not know about Gozo, besides probably everything, is that there's actual nature here. Now granted, this is an arid landscape covered in mostly shrubs, but there is an untouched scenery nonetheless. And that's due to the fact that all the real industry and urbanization is on Malta, thus leaving Gozo as the place to remember what grass and trees feel like. As I venture further into and around the edges of the rocky island, I get the sense that life here must not have been easy for early settlers. With not much lush vegetation or wildlife, the early inhabitants of Gozo had to make do with the little they had. An all too abrasive reality that oftentimes leads to using one's imagination out of survival just to conquer the elements. Case in point, the salt pans found on the island's northern coast. The checkerboard of rock-cut salt pans has been lying adjacent to Geni Bay for over 350 years, capturing wave after wave of fresh Mediterranean waters. A Gozitan tradition of harvesting sea salt that is far more boutique in nature now and less a means of making a living. It makes you wonder, doesn't it? How can you make so much out of so little? What other wonders can a tiny, barren topography like Gozo produce for its settlers? To find out, I follow the seaside-adjacent road down a few miles to an otherwise uneventful hilltop viewpoint. Why this mundane viewpoint, you ask? Because it's what's under it that matters. Hidden down an inconspicuous rabbit hole, you'll find the Tal-Mixta Cave. The sizable cavern lends itself as the perfect spot for a panoramic view of Ramla Bay, which, mind you, is hands down the nicest beach on Gozo. I can't help but also wonder how popular this place must be for any teenager on a date who still lives with their parents. You see, if I lived across the street, I'd be parked up next to this tiny hole every Friday and Saturday night with the rope stanchion, charging about €10 a head to all these kids who want to squirm into this cozy little cave. A small price to pay to show your side piece the best views of Gozo's for probably the next 3 minutes. Comino, Malta's tiniest island. After an early morning speedboat from Qala, I find myself along its rocky coasts and amidst its countless caves, the ones that seem to lie on a foundation of crystal blue glass and creating perhaps the most sought-after real estate in the hermit caveman market. Well worth pulling up with a speedboat and spending a whole day jumping from grotto to grotto, immersed in those pool-like waters. However, that's not what I'm doing today. So what should you know about tiny old Comino? Well, first off, nobody, and I mean nobody, lives here. Well, not entirely true. Actually, a third of its residents died in 2020. And before you go thinking that it's that stupid thing we've all been dealing with that we're all so tired of, in reality, only 3 people were left living on this island, and sadly, one of them passed away due to kidney failure in 2020. So now, there are only the final 2 remaining residents left on the island. And frankly, that seems like too many. You see, the 1.4 square mile island is desolate and barren, named after the cumin seeds that once flourished here. But as any quick walk on this dusty place will show you, they're clearly gone. Long stretches in the history of this island have seen it either privately owned or flat out abandoned entirely. About the most action this place saw was when those aforementioned grottos served as a place to hide for pirates looking to ambush ships sailing within earshot of Malta. Admittedly, that must have been pretty exciting to watch. That is, of course, if you were a wild boar, because that was pretty much the only thing that was living here back then. But still, this variety of that thankless landscape provides Comino with the perfect tools. An understated backdrop with just enough features to cultivate the curiosity of seasoned location scouts. The most idyllic natural light that would make any cinematographer buckle at their knees. And Hollywood simply couldn't resist.
Why Malta? Malta is on the 36th latitude, like Los Angeles, so the sun hits you at a certain angle that doesn't put shadows under your nose.
Right.
So you can shoot for 8 minimum to 10 hours a day. You see, the light is the secret of cinema, and we've had here some of the top lighting photographers in cinema.
Narcy Calamatta is in the upper echelon of modern Maltese arts. Carving his name into innumerable projects in the theatrical scene, both in front of and behind the bright lights of the stage, Narcy has made the craft his life's work. A legendary actor, theatrical director, playwright, and producer, he's also perhaps, and more importantly, the all-around father figure of the Maltese cinematic universe. The original MCU, I suppose? Narcy and his ragtag team of veteran local producers pitch Malta's adaptational settings to scores of Hollywood location scouts, thus putting the nation square in the sights of major motion picture studios. What followed was a wave of Oscar-winning productions that made Malta one of the most popular countries to shoot in per square mile on Earth. A cinematic tradition that still carries on in the hearts of producers to this day. I'm joining Narcy today for a chat about all things Malta and cinema at St. Mary's Tower, overlooking the shores of tiny Comino. So 1980 rolls around, you get a call, it's Robert Altman. He says to you, we need to build a set, can you do it? Turns out the film is Popeyes. What was that like?
That was a very nice experience because on the same year we were already making Race the Titanic, a major Hollywood movie, and Clash of the Titans. And when he said, shall we do Popeye? I need to build a Cape Cod type of timber village, Northeast America village. He said, found me a creek. We found the creek. We built the village in record time, in 3 months.
Oddly enough, a lot of film sets are usually destroyed or abandoned, but in this case, Popeye's Village is actually still in use. It's a theme park.
Immediately the movie finished, I had so many requests by people wanting to visit the set. I said, why don't we open it as a theme park?
And that's where it stands today.
And that's where it stands today.
Okay.
As Narcy and I delve further into the subject on this typically beautiful Mediterranean day, I wonder, will Malta ever be more than just a versatile film set for Hollywood?
A lot of films are shot here, but do you think that future Maltese generations are inspired by these films to want to make their own films versus just be featured in a Hollywood production?
Yes, of course. We have our university that has a course specifically for film directors. We have another college that teaches everything from acting to editing to sound, everything. They have their own studios, green, matte behind. We are teaching our youths of today that in 10 years' time we will be making our own movies. We have already started.
This can be an up-and-coming film nation. We can see Maltese films featured as best foreign film, you think, in a few years' time?
So we are already entering Maltese-speaking films. I am in 2 from last year. We entered one in the Edmonton Film Festival, and I was in Canada there.
Right, with subtitles, of course, because otherwise nobody would get it.
With English subtitles. You can't understand the Maltese language.
Never, no.
But the idea is there. You want to sell your country, your people, by making movies by the Maltese about Malta.
Best or favorite film ever shot in Malta is?
For me, Troy. With Brad Pitt.
Of course.
Not only because of Brad Pitt.
But he's the man.
Yeah. But we had to build a whole city of Troy. And in the last scene, destroy it, set fire to it.
Before I leave the tiniest island in bite-sized Malta, there's one spot I kinda have to visit. One of the only, so let's just call it the best, beach in Comino. A place where one can grab a fruit bowl, or perhaps a hollowed-out pineapple filled with your drink of choice, and squeeze your way onto whatever slice of rock is available closest to that shore that doubles as a saltwater pool. The Blue Lagoon. Me? I'm grabbing a beer and taking it in from the top. Not exactly in the mood to post up my towel next to some chain-smoking, greased-up French dude in a Speedo. Nope, not today, sis. It's hard to say that one can ever get to know a country in its entirety. That you understood its ambition, its roots, the food that brings smiles to their faces each and every day. I came to Malta oblivious, and I left with a stronger grasp on its identity than the limestone foundations that lie beneath it. Gozo and Comino, for their part, are the indispensable plot lines in a film so small, yet so intricately written, that to leave either out would hinder its third act. An act that is as rich as the backdrops in the imaginations of ageless dreamers.